Welcome to part 3 of Segues in Navigation Controllers. So what we're going to do in this part of the video is we're going to go ahead and create some programmatic segues. So the first thing they want us to do is they want us to go ahead and restore our application to a clean slate. So in order to do that, I'm going to close the current one that I have opened. And I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate it just in case I mess up when I'm eliminating some of this information. So I have a duplicate just in case, so I'll go ahead and open it back up. So basically what they want us to do is they want to remove all existing segues, controls, and labels from your storyboard. So we will go ahead, I'll click on my button, I'll delete that button. And I think let me do an undo delete. I'll go ahead and select my label, delete my label. I will go ahead on my yellow, go ahead and delete the button there. And go ahead on green, that has been deleted. Let me scroll on back so I have my label controller right there. I don't have any segues between the two of them. The other thing I want to do is I want to go into my actual view controller code, and I will go ahead and delete my outlet to my text view, and then I'll delete my unwind and my prepare. So let's go back to the main storyboard. So what we have here, if I look actually into, it looks like everything has been done correctly. So we've deleted everything. So what I want to do is I want to decrease the size, and I want to position these, my yellow one and then my green view controller down below. Okay, so now I think we're ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to place two buttons on the red view controller. One button will segue to the yellow screen, and the other will segue to the green. And then we'll add a UI switch that will determine whether or not either segue should be performed. If the switch is enabled, the segue can be performed. Otherwise, no segue will take place. So I'll go ahead and increase the size of my red here. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add a button. And I will go ahead and drop it down, and I'll change the text of it. It's going to be pushed to yellow. And then I will go back in, add another button. We're not going to set any constraints. We're not really worried about that now. We're worried more about the programmatic segues that we're going to be creating. We'll push to green. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to look for a switch. And we'll go ahead and scroll that down. I will just move my buttons here just a tad up. And then move my switch up a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to do, rather than control dragging from the buttons to the view controllers, you'll want to control drag from the red view controller to the yellow and green view controllers. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select our red view controller button, and we'll do a control drag over to yellow, and it's going to be a show segue. And then we're going to do the same thing and segue down to our green. And it'll be another show segue. Let me just decrease the size of this a little bit here. So the next thing we want to do is we need to go ahead and, since we're performing code, perform the segues in code, we need to go ahead and give each one of our segues a name. So I'll click on my yellow segue and I'll give it an identifier of yellow. And I will click on my green segue and I will give it an identifier of green. Okay, so we've gone ahead and we've added those segues now. So what I need to do next is we need to check the status of our UI switch. So what I need to do is I need to go ahead and create an outlet for the switch. So I will go ahead, open up my assistant editor, find my little outlet, and I'll control drag into my program. It's going to be an outlet. It's going to be called Segue Switch. The type is a UI switch, and we will go ahead and click Connect. And then the next thing I need to do is I need to control drag, create an action for each of my buttons. So I will select my push to yellow and I will control drag and insert an action. The name of the action will be yellow button tapped. And what I'm going to do is, instead of selecting any as the sender, I'm going to select a UI button because that's what's actually performing it. The event will be touched up inside. And then I need to do the same thing for my red, so I'll select my green, so I'll go ahead and select that one and drag on down, and what it'll be is green button tapped, and I will go ahead and change it to an UI button and click on Connect. One thing I want to do is I want to make sure I didn't mess up on my segue name. So I want to make sure that one is called yellow and that one is called green. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to actually go in and write the code. So in order to perform a segue programmatically, there is a method that exists on the view controllers called perform segue. The first parameter takes a string which just corresponds to the identifier you assign to the segue, and then the sender parameter is additional information that you can supply to the segue. In this case, we don't need to apply anything, so we'll just go ahead and specify nil. So let me click into my view controller, and in my yellow button tapped, I will just, if segue switch is on, then we want to go ahead and perform the segue. So I'll click on perform segue with my identifier. So my identifier is going to be yellow and my sender will be nil. And then I want to do the same thing in my green. Segue switch dot is on. We'll perform another segue. And this time my identifier is green and my sender is nil. Okay, so what I'm going to do first though, instead of specifying green, I'm going to specify an incorrect identifier. I'm going to specify red instead when the green button is tapped, so we can kind of see what happens when an error occurs. So I'll go ahead, click on my run button. And as it comes up, okay, so I'm going to change it to off. I'll push on yellow. It doesn't do anything. I'll change it to on. I'll go ahead, push to yellow, and it transitions to yellow. Go back to my red. Go ahead, and now I'm going to push to green, and we should see an error. So what we have here is we have an exception that gets thrown, and if we go ahead and scroll on up to the actual top, you kind of get the feel of what actually occurred. Basically, our traffic segues view controller has no segue with identifier red. So that kind of lets us know that we probably messed up either naming our segue or in our code. So I'll double click on, and I will go ahead and update it to green, and we will go ahead and rerun. So I'll click on push to green, it pushes to green. I'll go ahead, push to yellow, it pushes to yellow. Pushes to green, it pushes to green. The pop will not work because we removed that code. And then I'll turn it off. If I click on push to green or push to yellow, it does not work. So this is a lesson that just shows you how you can go ahead and create programmatic segues. You're going to be doing a lot of that in CIS 265. So segues and navigation controllers are very important topics. So that is all I have for segues and navigation controllers.